Hi, toy breeders. Today I'm going to do a toy test breeding demonstration for you, and the attempt is to kind of show how you might use this testing to help you line breed. I'm going to look up Gator Creek and pull up all of the Gator Creek, I spelled it wrong, Gator Creek dogs. And I have a breeding already in mind, but I'm going to demonstrate to you guys both our comparison tool and then a test breeding. Okay, so I'm going to look up Gator Creek Revelry, and I'm going to look up I'm going to compare her to another dog. Okay, so these are our potential breedings here, but first we're going to go through her profile. So you can have all of this information, including sire and dam, on your profile. Down below it is your genetics information, and over here would be her photo if that had been uploaded yet. She has two different DLA types, and neither one of these is the most common. The most common is, I believe, 1018 and 2003. So she has neither of the most common DLA type in your breed, which is at about 40% for the 2003. Alleles carried are the 2003. So this is good. She has different DLA types. Your breed average for outlier index, which is what we use to maintain distributed genetics within a breed, meaning that there is no bottleneck. In this breed in particular, there is no bottleneck because you guys have such a high, or the sample have such a high OI average. And so that's really great, and she's above that. So we just want to keep an eye on OI and make sure that it's not dropping as a population. Average genetic relatedness, your average is 0 currently. Now this is going to change a lot as more dogs are uploaded, but the more negative you are, the more unrelated you are to the other dogs in the database. OI is the only thing you want to go higher in your measurements. Internal relatedness. Now she here has a fairly high OIR. It's not insanely high, but it would be something that we would want to drop in the next generation for your breed, for your average, your litter average. And then down below, these are some more measurements. This homozygosity by loci tells you, again, it's an inbreeding measurement. And below that, percent unrelated in this database. She's unrelated to 62.5%. If any health information has been added, that would show up here, and temperament information would show up here, as well as appearance. So she's white. So I'm going to go to potential breedings by genetic value to the breed would be what I would use, because that's how I like to sort. But you can also do AGR, which are dogs that'll be more unrelated to other dogs in the database, or genetic relatedness. Now, genetic relatedness is our categories, but both of these other two breeding selections have those same categories. So even if you sort by one of these, you're still going to get the categories. It's just going to put preference on these two things. And then potential breedings by color, if you want to breed for a certain color, you can click that. But I'm going to do a comparison. So I can search Gator Creek here and just wait, and it'll pull up, I believe, the first 10 dogs with this name in the database. And I'd like to compare her to How Appropriate. So this is going to pull up a test breeding or a comparison between these two dogs. Okay. So how closely related are they to each other? Here you can see they're coming up as category 10, which should be unrelated. Now these two dogs in terms of pedigree are related. I forget how close, but it's a fairly close line breeding. You can see it in the first 3 generations. How are they related to other dogs in the database? Breed average, genetic relatedness is -0.02. How Appropriate is very related to other dogs in this database, but Revelry is right around your breed average. No health reports for either one of them. Your DLA haplotypes. Here, he has one of the most common here at 2003, but otherwise they have different DLA types except for this one. So some of the puppies will have the exact same DLA type, but that's really not one of your biggest concerns in a breeding. It's when all else is equal to consider DLA type. Inbreeding. The two dogs compared to each other. So they're both kind of inbred. So what we're going to do after we look at this, we're going to go to their actual test breeding, which I've done before. You can look at their breed average outlier index. So she is greater than your breed average, and he has a much lower outlier index. And again, this tells you how typical or atypical a dog is for your breeding population. And you guys have a pretty high breed average, meaning that there aren't a lot of very common genetics carried by the majority of the dogs of this tested population. But we want to try to keep your breed average where it is, and that will prevent a bottleneck occurring. So we're going to look at the test breeding and see what we have for this as well. Ancestry. This kind of just tells you how uncommon or common parents might have been. So if there was a combined ancestry of one that was really high, it would mean that they had a very different sire or dam. And this here says that they both have some pretty typical ancestry for your population. And then down here, you can see how likely they will have homozygous alleles at each tested loci. Okay, so let's go to their actual test breeding, because this gave us a lot of information, but let's see what the actual litters say. So you'll see I have about 1 million litters under my litters. Okay, so let's see. Here she is. I'm going to click on her. Now you can sort by dam or sort by sire up here, so if you'd prefer to see your sire first, because that's the way it's typically been done, then you can do that. Now I got to click this plus sign. So just so it's nice to see how to do this. So you click on the dam's name and that'll expand. Click this and that'll expand down here. You can see the sire's profile, the dam's profile, and we can go to the summary. I have only simulated 500 puppies, so I'm going to go all the way up to 3,000. So I'm going to push that, and it's going to take a little while. But here you can see all of their stats. Now that I've run this test breeding. So we're going to go to the test breeding and see, after going through their comparison tool, what we might be able to see from their summary. But yeah, you can see here their OI, their IR, and their AGRs. He's silver and she's white. So I'm going to go to their summary. And this is what I like to pull up when I do most test breedings, but I just wanted to show you guys the comparison tool first. And you can use comparison tools between siblings or two potential studs to look at the different options for the studs. There's lots of different uses for the comparison tool. Okay, so this tells you, after simulating, 3,500 puppies. So that's a lot of poop if we were actually having that many puppies, obviously. But this will tell you, if you created 3,500 puppies, where are they likely to fall? So we saw that they are category 10 equivalent to unrelated in this tested population. However, if you look at their internal relatedness, what they'll potentially have, so this is why the test breeding is important, their average internal relatedness is 0.06. So we generally say you would want to try to have breedings that are around 0 or lower. But this isn't awful. It depends on pedigree risks, and obviously this was a line breeding. So in terms of line breeding goes, the average is not that high, but it does go pretty high. So Dr. Peterson says anything above 0.15 is a fairly high level of inbreeding. That's where he kind of puts the marker. So you can see here, everything above here is fairly inbred. So you have to kind of look at your population, or at this potential graph, and see how many puppies are going to fall above that, and then consider your pedigree risks and what are your goals for your breeding. So if everything else is what you would like in the breeding, then you at least know where you're falling in terms of inbreeding here. The outlier index is falling right about where the breed average is, so that's good. And minimum to maximum, that's fairly good to me. I like to see a lot of the breeding above 0.3, just because when we go below 0.3, you're starting to head towards a bottleneck. So I like the look of this. And again, their DLA types are fairly diverse. 25% of the puppies would be homozygous, but the other ones would be diverse. So again, in all breedings, this is one piece of the puzzle that we have to consider. So if it's a breeding you might otherwise do or not do based on the pedigree, all those things still matter. So health testing, temperament, structure, and your pedigree risk. If I'm repeating myself here, these are all things to consider. So this is one look at a line breeding and what you might think about during that. Okay, so I also did another breeding for Barbara and Jennifer last night. Barbara and I were looking at Jennifer's dogs in the database. And I pulled up Gator Creek Unscripted Raven, and I found that she is unrelated to this Gator Creek Sun Sprite Better Not Jaywalk. So I want to show this test breeding. So this is not a line breeding. I believe the female was brought in to the program. I'm not sure the story behind it, but I looked at this test breeding and they were suggested to each other, and I liked the look, so I sent it to her last night. So the average genetic, or the outlier index, is above breed average. They're unrelated, and we have different DLA types for both, so all puppies will be heterozygous. And also, none of these are the common ones for your breed. It's 2003 and 1018 are the two most common. Here, for internal relatedness, the average is below 0, which is what we usually advise to see. Now, you'll see that there's still some puppies that are likely going to fall about above that 0.15 mark, but it's so much less than that other breeding. So this is a breeding that looks good, but again, it's not a line breeding. So these were some examples. And the way I found this was I went to Unscripted Raven's profile, and I went to breeding by outlier index, and then went to see what other Gator Creek dogs showed up first in the list. So I went here. I went to breed by outlier index because I like to try to keep the outlier index at or above a breed average. And then I just searched for the Gator Creek. Gator Creek. There we go. And he comes up number 12 for her. So that's how I made that breeding. All right. Well, this was my first test breeding demonstration for toy poodles. If you have any questions, you can feel free to ask. And thanks for watching.